Okay, just introduce yourself and your name.
I'm Diana Liverman. I'm the co-director of the Institute for the Environment at the University of Arizona in the US, and I'm also a senior research fellow at the Environmental Change Institute at Oxford University. And I'm a climate change researcher. My research focuses on the impacts of climate change in the developing world, particularly Latin America.
Okay, so what do you think is going on here so far? Do you think we're looking at real solutions, or do you think we're just looking at business as usual?
I think we are getting some solutions because we are getting some emission reductions below business as usual. The key thing is that those reductions aren't big enough to avoid dangerous climate change. So the problem we've got is that the emission reductions people are promising are sort of better than we could have hoped, but that's sort of making people feel positive, whereas in fact the emission reductions need to be much, much greater than what's already on the table.
Can you tell us what we need? The emission reductions and what they're basically looking at?
Well,
like the real targets.
Yeah, we should probably be going for 450 parts per million initially, but we really need 350 if we want to avoid long-term climate change because of all the climate change that's already built into the system from the emissions today, and also because once the glaciers start melting, once you get these positive feedbacks.
But aren't those already happening? Like, haven't we lost half of our Arctic sea ice already?
We've lost a lot of the Arctic sea ice, we've lost a lot of the ice in the Andes, so we're already seeing observed climate change. So we've already got 1 degree of warming.
So why aren't we calling it dangerous now when it's already dangerous?
Well, dangerous is a subjective concept, and one of the problems with the whole UN FCCC text is they let in a very subjective concept like dangerous, and so everybody can define dangerous in their own ways, and they've never really sat down and defined what dangerous is. I mean, they said, oh, it's 2 degrees,
right,
but in fact 2 degrees is too warm for a lot of the parts of the world. So I think what we need to be doing is just doing everything possible to bring down emissions, and I wish that probably the focus should be on every focus should be on a decarbonised economy. We should be talking about massive investment.
Exactly. Like, why are people not talking about? And I mean, they're using different baselines for years, right? And different.
Yes.
Is that to confuse the public? Do you think?
No, it's to get political advantage because everybody wants to pick the base.
Good?
Well, no, you want to pick. I mean, England and Germany
so you can
started
increase.
it because, you know, England and Germany went under Kyoto, picked the baseline that made them be able to take easy reductions because of the collapse of the economy and the switch from coal to gas in England. So everybody wants to pick an advantageous baseline, and that's real politics. But every time you give someone an advantageous baseline, that's less emissions out of the atmosphere. So Canada being an example of trying to negotiate whatever it is, 2005-2006 baseline.
Yeah, 2005.
I mean, yes, they have the right to do it because everybody else does it, but what that means is more emissions in the atmosphere that wouldn't otherwise have been there.
Do you think the average person understands what those baselines even mean? And
probably not. I mean, I think that there are different ways to communicate it, and in fact one of the best ways to communicate it is the little ticker up there, which was done by some scientists at Oxford, which is how much more carbon we can use up before it gets dangerous.
That's amazing.
And that actually gives you a quantified amount. It says you've got,
but doesn't that say the US and Australia have 5 years to use their whole, in 5 years they will have used their whole quota available until 2050?
Yeah.
So how come no one's talking about that?
More people need to talk about it. I mean, I think it's partly the scientists' fault because we keep talking about all these different units. We talk about 2 degrees, we talk about parts per million, we talk about absolute amounts, but really to communicate it we need to be telling people you can use this amount this year.
That's it.
Whether you're a person or a country.
So should we be looking at, sorry to interrupt you, I have so many questions for you and you're amazing to talk to because I'm getting some real information. Should we be looking at rationing? Straight carbon tax? Do you take a position on any of that?
I think rationing would be very hard. There's some ethical issues around rationing because very poor people might sell their allowance when they really need it to survive, but they are They are prototyping carbon rationing in the UK on a voluntary basis, and even just by having the information about the carbon people are using, they are changing their behaviour. So actually one of the more positive campaigns out there is the British one, the 10-10 campaign.
Yes.
And I think that's good because it gives people really concrete, like, you know, eat less meat, do this, do that, and you can reduce your emissions by 10%. It's a very accessible way to
Isn't that the only one on the planet right now that actually has a target in place that they're...
No, I think there are other countries
are there?
well, everybody expresses their targets differently.
Right,
and some of the, I mean, I think that is one thing to keep in mind is it's not really the exact emission reduction that someone's committing to. You want to look at all the other mandates. So a big renewable obligation is an emission reduction, they just don't call it that. So you need to look at everything that a country's doing. So, you know, automobile standards, renewable standards, you know, sort of regulating government carbon emissions, and there's a good study by Deutsche Bank that added all that up, and things actually look a little better if you look not just at the explicit emission reductions, but if you look at some of the other reductions as well. But they're still not enough. They only get us about halfway there, which means we're still heading for sort of like 3 degrees.
So tell me again what we need to get to. Okay. Wrap it up.
I think we need...
And how fast?
I would like to see the industrialised countries go for a 50% reduction by 2020. Then I'd feel safer.
Okay. If you have one message for the NGOs, how they can help achieve that, what would you say?
I would say pick 1 or 2 things. I think that the NGOs are fighting everything around climate change, and I think that not just the NGOs but the scientists, we need to pick the big things.
Do you think we need to get together?
We need to pick big sectors and decarbonise them worldwide. So we should just be pushing for carbon-free electricity, and then we should go for iron and steel and the cement sector, and we should pick the things that are really going to make the difference. So actually a lot of what we focus on are like little emission reductions.
Is that livestock a huge thing?
Methane is a big one. Yeah, so getting people to eat a bit less meat would be good. I don't think you should have to, don't be hair shirt and tell them all to be vegetarian. If they halved the meat they ate, it would make a difference.
But even half would make a huge impact,
it would make a big
wouldn't it?
difference, yeah.
You're amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks.